Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Oh, good. Welcome. My name is Chris Fitzpatrick. I'm the Studiosity General Manager responsible for University Partnerships, and I'd like to welcome you all here to our second annual Partner Symposium. Before we kick off the formalities, there's a few housekeeping things that I think it would be just worth pointing out. The sessions are going to be broadcast and recorded, so we will have to start each session according to the agenda because people will be joining in expecting us to start on time. There'll also be a photographer floating around from time to time, so you can ignore that person. And in terms of bathrooms, you will have seen probably on the way in, just next to the lifts, closest to this side is the ladies, far end gentlemen, and also if we have any emergency situations, the stairs are right next to the bathroom, so easy to find. Mobile phones, I know you're all busy and probably want to have a bit of a squiz at the phone every now and again. That's fine, no problem. But if you can make sure they're turned off, that'd be great. Finally, the Wi-Fi. You do have access to Wi-Fi. On the back of your program, you will see the network is Studiosity and the password there. It's actually a two-step process. So once you get into there, you'll also need to use your little bit of paper that's on your table as well. There's another password on there. So if you have any problems connecting to Wi-Fi, Christine up the back there who's waving at the moment, just give her a yell and she'll be able to help you out. And anything else you need, you can talk to someone from Studiosity who'll be happy to help you. So without further ado, we are very grateful today to have with us Uncle Greg Sims to perform our Welcome to Country. Uncle Greg is an Aboriginal elder on the campus at Western Sydney University and a Gadigal elder. He's well known as an activist for reconciliation, a traditional woodcarver, a storyteller, and an educator of Aboriginal culture. Uncle Greg's ties to the Aboriginal community of Greater Western Sydney are through his ancestral links to the Gundagara people of the Blue Mountains and the Gadigal people of the Darug Nation. So please welcome Uncle Greg.
I would like to say good morning to all. Good morning. Good morning. I've got a bit of a limp. I have to have a hip replacement soon. By the time I get this hip replacement, I'll be 69 years old. I have to have it done in 12 months. So when I get this hip replacement, I'll be a younger person again. And I won't look a day over 68. I'd like to say what I mean, Mitigay good and buttock. Hello friends, it's good to see you. My name's Greg Sims, everyone knows me as Uncle Greg. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge we're on Duddock land. I would like to acknowledge elders past and present. We don't own the land owns us. We come from Mother Earth, we are the land. And the land upon today belongs to the Barramatical tribe of the Duddock Nation, the Eel people. And where I come from the Gadigal tribe of the Duddock, which is based in Sydney, and there I belong to the Whale people. I've been residing in Western Sydney for the last 32 and a half years, which is around the Mount Road area where we have a lot of resources. And that area is the Wianamatical tribal area of the Duddock Nation. I'm one of the Aboriginal elders of Western Sydney. To become an elder, you have to do lots and lots of work in your community before you get respect in return. And we as elders, we go out and teach how to break down barriers and build bridges. We're out there in the community trying to turn people's lives around. And I'd just like to say that when people come to sacred country, they forget that our people are the First Nation people of the sacred land. And they think all Aboriginal people throughout the country speak the same language. You know, we have well over 500 dialects in this country. In New South Wales, we have well over 136. So this must have been a multicultural country before settlers came here in 1788 and the ones that followed. By saying this, we are all Australians. And we as Aboriginal elders, we don't exclude people from the circle. We'll have people to come to the circle, share their values and stories. We will never have knowledge if we don't do this. And once we start learning from each other, then we're heading in the right direction towards reconciliation. And I remember my Auntie Susie before she passed on. She used to use these beautiful words such as, the music will always sound better if we use both the black and white keys. And I think it's a beautiful saying because where we live today is one community, many cultures. And I'd just like to say that one of my, what I do out in the communities today, I support Muslim communities. That's what I do. And the thing is I want to be an Aboriginal elder because I brought all my values and stories from the eastern shores of Botany Bay, a place called La Perez, where I grew up in Aboriginal Reserve, which I classify as my university campus, where my elders taught me well. They taught me always show respect, acknowledge, never be greedy, always share. And all these strong values, and as you take these into the next generation to share. And all these old-fashioned values that I was taught, they can't teach you that in university. All this talk. So I've been living that Aboriginal life for the last 65 years, 66 years, since I was about 2 years old. So it's the thing is that taking all the values and bringing it all out here, my saltwater culture, working with the diverse of Aboriginal people living in Western Sydney, and I believe we have well over 85 different dialects of Aboriginal people living between Blacktown and Penrith. And here I am sharing my saltwater culture with the diverse of the people coming from other areas, such as running water people and the muddy water people. But it doesn't stop there because our values and stories belongs to all Australians. So what we own is yours too. So it's not about Aboriginal people and non-Aboriginal people. It's about all of us coming together and sharing. And the thing is, out there doing welcomes now, it's protocol to do that, just to let people know whose country it is, because within the Darug Nation, our Darug Nation goes north of the Wiseman Ferry, or maybe let's say to Hornsby, all the way down by the other side of Campbelltown to Appin, up in the Blue Mountains around Mount Victoria, and all the way down to Sydney Cove. And within that nation, we have well over 35 tribes. So that's quite a lot. You know, we've got the inland Darug and we've got the coastal Darug. So I'd like to thank you for having me this morning for the partner symposium for 2017. I'd like to acknowledge our special speakers with us this morning, other distinguished guests. Well, he's all distinguished guests, aren't you? He's all special. That's why he's here. But it's always nice to meet up with people that play a different role in things, you know, because that's how we learn. So if we sit there and listen to the one thing all the time, we don't learn anything. We need that little bit of a change in some of the what we actually do. Makes us a better person. So thank you for having me, and I go back to work after this because I work with Ability Options, service provider looking after people with disabilities. So I have to go back to work after this, and I enjoy what I do. I love what I do, and I do what I love. So that's the main thing. And I'm out there trying to educate people in lots and lots of ways. So I don't want to talk about all the things I do because there's a heap of work out there in the community. What I do, I come into the Aboriginal Children's Court to support the youth on Fridays down in George Street, Parramatta. But I'm all over the place and meeting up with all these dignitaries, and people always say to me, oh, you're meeting up with these honchos, because I meet up with these ministers, like the Minister of Health, like the federal or state, prime ministers. Oh, you're meeting up with all these honchos. I said, no, I'm not meeting up with no one. They are meeting up with me. They said, why do you say that? I said, it only taken me a couple of years for what they do now, but it'll take them a lifetime to learn what I was taught. That's the difference. And all those amazing stories I have taught, as I mentioned, they're your stories too. Somebody do the welcome, and I'll go back to work then. So before I get the welcome, I'd just like to say one more thing, is that when we take our next step, just remember the ones that walked this sacred land before. And I just like to acknowledge people that's come here to Sydney from interstate and maybe Central Coast and just local. So welcome. Chari Mara, Dara Capemo. Kami Maria Pemo, the Galariki Papana. By Namina Waranang, Night Dizzy Guy, Diana Gami Yalarang, the Galariki Tiari, the Galariki, the Gami Guy. Julio when you're going to go, they're going to go. Dala Lowy Muka Bala Nagami. This is the low in here, 3 million to go. Jam your Tiari, the Galariki go to Jomana. Midday, Dara and Barak, Nina Dara Capemo. Did we go? This is Dark Lands, the land of ancestors. The spirits that walk among us. Spirits that have been here since the dream time. A language in a culture and passed down from generation to generation to continue an unbroken culture that has extended for thousands of years. In the language of our people, we welcome you to Dark Lands. Thank you and have a lovely day.
Thank you, Uncle Greg, so much, and for that very warm and heartfelt welcome. And I couldn't think of a better way to start, because really this is all about a conversation today and tomorrow, and we're here to learn from each other. So your words couldn't have been more appropriate. Thank you again. We are very lucky to be hosted here today by our friends from Western Sydney University. Beautiful new facility. I think you'll agree it's just a wonderful place, and on a beautiful spring day, I couldn't think of a better place to be. To deliver our opening address from the Western Sydney University, we have Professor Simon Barrie, the inaugural Pro Vice-Chancellor for Learning Transformations. Please welcome Simon. Thanks, thank you very much, Uncle Greg, for that welcome as well. Every time you speak, I learn something else new, which is the way it should be. So thank you. Always was, always will be. It's my great pleasure to add my welcome to the university. We are very proud to host this event, because the sort of partnership that this event represents is the sort of partnership that I believe is the future of education. So I'm going to say just a few words of welcome, and then I'm going to get out of the way so you can have your conversations for the rest of the day. Just to pick up on what you couldn't have missed as you walked into this amazing building. Everything about learning is changing. From the spaces to the people who are involved in teaching it, to the partners that are involved in teaching it. You only have to walk through the floors of this building, and I hope you do get a chance to have a look around this building to see that this is one of the most technology-infused campuses in Australia. We did a walkthrough recently, and one of the things that surprised us was that we found students from every New South Wales university using our building, which we were kind of proud of. That was delightful. We hadn't realised that word had got out, that this is a great place to come to learn. And what we have is groups of students who are collaborating and cooperating. We've got a new vertical high school going up just across the road. I'm expecting that we will start to see students from the schools in here as well. The spaces, the public spaces in this building, are booked out months in advance for city events, for community events, for university events. The top floors of this building are not ours. The top floors have PwC in them. We deliberately co-located a business tenant with our business school and put our PhD students on the floor in between, to ensure that we started to get some collaboration with industry that is different. So the very spaces in which we learn are changing. But of course, that's not really all that is changing about learning. And some of this is, I think, what I'd like to just give you a few suggestions about and ideas about that you might come back to as you go through your conversations today. The reality is that learning is something that's never been limited to class time. It's never been limited to the 2 hours of consultation time. Universities are just starting to realise that, I suspect. We're recognising that learning happens 24/7. It doesn't turn off. The reality is that most of the really useful learning that students do, they don't do in our lectures. They do it outside of the lectures. They do it when they are thinking, when they are working, when they are asking questions. Universities have started to think about this and have started to change the models with which they provide learning support. We no longer rely on students being able to drop in when it suits us to have them drop in. So the notion of 24/7 learning support from all sorts of partners in education is a reality. It's something that we struggle with, but it is something that I think is going to be increasingly demanded of us. That notion of learning support is something, we lost a picture there, something that you will all be very familiar with. It is part of what Studiosity, I think, brings to the partnership with universities, and it is part of the way this university has partnered with Studiosity to think about how that support complements the work that we do of learning support in other aspects of the university. It's a model that we look at, and it's a model that we know will continue to evolve because there will be multiple partners in higher education as we go forward. I'll come back to touch on that in a minute. Sitting behind some of the changes around this 24/7 is the dramatic rise in artificial intelligence. You only have to look at that sort of timeline to realise just how recent this is. The changes that have happened since the end of this timeline are probably more dramatic than the ones that have happened in the 5 years before it. Thinking about how that is going to play out in education is going to be a fascinating thing to be engaged with. It's something that I'm sure everyone in this room is starting to come to terms with. The thing that basically artificial intelligence lets you start to do is think about this lovely thing called adaptive learning. And adaptive learning is obviously, a term that has come to mean something in terms of technology-enabled learning and responsive systems. But the reality is that good teaching has always been about adaptive learning. And what we are starting to see are some of the principles that we know underpin learning start to flow out to the way the systems and support provide that sort of learning support now. What that adaptive learning, I think, is going to allow us to do is start to think in a different way about how we can pay personal attention at scale to students' learning needs. One of the challenges that we've seen in higher education is with the dramatically increased class sizes, we have seen a decrease in that attention that students need to support their learning. When you actually start pulling apart all of those ratios, you often find that sitting underneath anything at scale, be it Open University, Studiosity, is this magical 1:25 ratio. Somewhere along the line, you get small enough groups of learners connecting with someone or something. That's a very important thing to think about, because if we lose that ability to connect meaningfully with our students, I think we have lost what is meaningful about learning, particularly when it comes to higher education. Sitting underneath that idea about artificial intelligence and the ability to meaningfully give students attention at scale is, I think, the thing that is going to be most interesting in the future. This is this notion of learning analytics. And dare I say, of every term doing the rounds in higher education at present, that is the one that is most misunderstood. It's understandable why it's misunderstood, but I suppose that, and I'm probably, preaching to the converted here in some ways, learning analytics is not data mining, but so often we are mistaken for data miners. The idea that we will just have all this data, we will pull it out, and somehow there'll be something meaningful in that data. If you start to look at some of the recent changes around the use of learning analytics around the world, what people are starting to do is realise that the learning analytics data that is most useful are not keystrokes. It's not about time people spend in parts of websites. It's actually about what happens and what teachers do. It's about how teachers design their courses, how teachers teach, and how learners engage with that teaching. And it's actually starting to get meaningful data about that moment of engagement that is the richest source of data that we can have. The people in this room sit at exactly that node. The work that is done in terms of online learning support is one of the richest sources of data for meaningful learning analytics, because we can start to see how the feedback that we give to students, how the way we structure those interactions leads to meaningful learning. That's quite different sorts of data. If we're going to make sense of that data, we need a slightly different partnership. We need a partnership that is not about data mining. It is a partnership that is about educational research and data. We need to understand the nature of that learning and teaching engagement, and that's what educational research gives us, as the kind of open, recursive, semiotic system that it is. Because learners are not a black box, and there's not a stimulus response outcome in learning. What there is a learner who makes decisions and mucks up every algorithm we want to put out there. It's actually understanding how learners and teachers engage that lets you do something meaningful when it comes to adaptive learning and learning analytics. Getting that conversation right is going to be something that I think that we collectively need to start to do. But I think it's a very fertile conversation if we can have it. Why do we need to do this? Why now more than ever? You know, people talk about the why more than ever now being about competition, about more students, less funding. Those are sideline issues as far as I'm concerned. If you look at what is coming down the next 10 years in terms of the students that are going to university, they will be leaving university to a radically disrupted world of work. The jobs that we think we're training them for won't be there. If they are there, they will be there in name only, and people will have to learn and adapt to learn new jobs that might have been called old titles. Learning is going to be at an absolute premium. Already people talk about what it is that is going to equip this future workforce, and it is that adaptive resilience to learn. That's something that not all students have in equal amounts. One of the things that we need to recognise is that we have an education system that promotes and builds inequality. I moved from Sydney University, one of the most privileged universities in the country, to Western Sydney University, one of the universities with its highest first and family intake. The difference in what the students bring in terms of the social capital for learning is huge. That social capital is a privilege that students have at present. I need to work out some ways that we can support that privilege from being the sole determinant of what a student does with their life. So there is an absolutely pressing need for this education to start to address radically disrupted future of work that puts learning at the heart of it, but that recognises that we are facing a profound social crisis in Australia. Western Sydney is home to some of the fastest employment growth. It's the third largest economy in the country already. It is about to start generating $95 billion worth of income. All of that money is going to flow east unless we do something about making sure that we keep jobs for the West and learners who are capable of doing those jobs in the West. At present, we have one of the fastest growing rates of inequality in the world, and it's huge. And the place where that is biggest is Western Sydney. Not only do we have this potentially huge amount of development and generation of income, but we have 8 of the 10 most disadvantaged local government areas in Sydney. Education needs to start to address those things. The tool to education is being able to learn. I think your next 2 days' conversations are about how you support learners to become more able to learn. That's one of the most important conversations that I think we could have at present, and I really hope you enjoy the next 2 days. Let me just add to say welcome. Please take a moment to enjoy this building. It's a great building. I look forward to meeting some of you for the time that I can stay this morning, and enjoy the rest of your time here. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. And again, thank you